Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies, also known as PWD Allies Podcast. Check it out on Spotify or your favorite app. Today, I have part 2 of our 9-part series. I have Cassandra Pollock rejoining me today and continuing on where we left off from the last episode, talking about her displacement on housing. So Cassandra was homeless for a period of time, and I would not envy that for anybody. It is not something that anyone should actually have to go through in life. It can happen to anybody at any time. Cassandra will dive right back into where we left off the other day. And but before we get going with Cassandra, I want to welcome one of our special guests that we have on our panel here. It's Mary Belanger. Hello, Mary.
MJ Belanger.
MJ Belanger.
Yeah, we are.
That was close.
I love the Canadian version always.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always awesome to have you join with us on this very important series that we have going. It's all about lived experience stories that disabled Canadians in Canada go through on a day-to-day basis. It's legislated poverty. I don't like to sugarcoat it because I just say how it is. And it's just wrong. And in a very wealthy Canada that we live in. And it has to be changed. It needs to be a livable income to survive with the high cost of living, the high market rents. People should be able to live where they want to live in the kind of housing that they want to live in, not, with saying, well, you need to live here because you need to have cheaper housing or wherever it may be. If you want cheaper housing, go where the housing is getting built, but is it private sector, public sector? Let's just get the housing built. Let's just get people situated and give them the resources that they need to pay the rent that they need, buy all their disability supplies that they need, all the resources, yada, yada. I can get into a whole long spiel on myself on a talk show on that one, but here's Cassandra, where we left off. Hello, Cassandra.
Yeah, hello. So I think where we left off was I think I had told you that I had finally secured a roommate situation, which was not ultimately what I was looking for, but I found a good fit. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky. And the fact that, I didn't find it through traditional circumstances. It was really only the fact that I do, besides doing, the podcast with you guys, I also am a regular caller in an Alberta podcast. And I'm also very involved with various advocacy groups even before. And I've been not just advocating for housing, but I've been advocating not just advocating for disability, but also for housing as a human right. And we've also talked in the past about the market basket measure versus the livable wage calculation. Mm-hmm. And at the time when we talked about it, it was 50% of that. Yep. And I think, but before I get into that too much, I just want to maybe reiterate that the way I found housing was because I do have some sort of reach through my advocacy. And I was even doing my own independent videos. I was getting people reaching out to me that had helped me in numerous ways from anywhere. I had a couple offers of temporary accommodation, but, that were extremely inaccessible. Like There's
Oh.
degrees of inaccessible. One of the most inaccessible things was I already had 10 stairs I was having trouble navigating. And one of the offers was for like the stairs were like almost a foot deep, and there were more than a dozen just to get up to the front door of this building.
Wow.
Where my friend's husband is still living. And I was like, I can barely navigate these ones. I don't know how I'm going to get in and out of that place.
Exactly.
Right. Like there was just, yeah, it was not an option. That was just to get up the door. There's actually more stairs inside too, but the cement steps outside, just the way the building, it's an odd design. It was just not accessible.
You almost needed like an escalator to go up it, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing like that, right? Like
No.
it's just, it's like these, it's just a really weird setup, that building. It's probably built in the 60s or 70s, and it was
or 1800s, late 1800s maybe.
it was like, but I mean, like huge steps. I was like, I used to have trouble navigating them before I had trouble navigating my own. And I was looking at it now and going, oh yeah, there's no way I don't. I mean, in a crunch, I guess I would do what I could, but I don't know how I wouldn't be going out every day. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so the options I was getting were not ideal. And then one of the things that happens, of course, I got really sick, and one of the options was a temporary solution for a few nights at a friend's, which would have been her sleeping on the floor and me sleeping in her single bed, which, I had to buy a new mattress. It was just not ideal. But what happened is her mom's immune compromised, and I got really sick with possibly a flu, possibly COVID. We don't know. And so that option I couldn't do anymore, because I couldn't, put them at risk of, her mom had already had COVID and is suffering from long COVID and has trouble breathing and stuff like that. So I just didn't want to, and I don't think they would have, they would have said, I know that wouldn't have been an option anymore. But what ended up happening was I had paid, of course, out of my own pocket. I had to borrow money to do it. And I got paid for 6 days in a hotel. And it wasn't until I had already paid for that, and I had not asked my worker for anything. I just said, look, this is where I'm at. I managed to scrounge up 6 days. I've got till this date, and then I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I've got till this date, and hopefully something will come up. But this is where, just to give them an update and let them know where I am.
Yeah.
And then my daughter paid for 2 days, and then I got a call right after she paid for those 2 days from my worker saying, oh, we'll cover 2 weeks, which brought me to December 1st. And about 2 days after he said that, a friend actually hooked me up with somebody that was actually also a friend of mine, but I never thought. She connected them with a video I had just done about what I was going through with the whole hotel situation, because it was either that or I was living in a car, and I really was facing living in a car if I didn't find something. And the shelter spaces, like I had called, one of the issues around shelter spaces is when it comes to shelter spaces for women, they're mostly dedicated to women fleeing domestic violence, women facing addiction, or women facing homelessness with children. There are spaces, I guess, for homelessness that don't, but they're very, very few. Like, and where other certain spaces might, in some circumstances, make exceptions, they can't, because they're all just at too much capacity right now.
Right.
And so places are narrowing their criteria and not making exceptions where they might have in the past, because they just can't. And so that was the reality. And what happened was, this friend was a landlord up in Edmonton, and they belong to landlord groups, which I'm not a landlord, so I can't belong. and they put out a nice ad and they basically sold me. And because they're a landlord selling to other, and they're talking me up about what a wonderful person they think I am, which I really appreciated. That was how I actually had 4 options. In the end, I went to see all of them, and I actually had a choice. But one of those options, ironically, was somebody I had emailed on my own and never got a response. And then I got a response when I remember looking at it going, oh, I emailed you. But anyway, I ended up choosing the place I'm at because it was actually, I mean, my roommate Lorna is just the most lovely lady. We get along really well. Yeah, that was, and she was in an area that I actually wanted to live in because it's close to
totally
a better support system for me here.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where I left off. And I've been on, I just gave my last update on the Breakdown Alberta, and I guess they want to do a pre-recorded interview with me because I've been kind of updating them. But a couple of things that have come up just, I think the one article came out right before or just right after I moved in here. And it was an article talking about 2-person households, like 2 income, like working households with 2 incomes. And they can't afford places to live in Calgary. And so they were ending up in hotels and campgrounds. And some of them had been living in those places for over a year or 2 years because they couldn't find housing. And I was like, wow. And the way I was being treated by Aish and talked to was like, somehow I wasn't doing enough and I wasn't planning enough. But then I'm reading these CBC articles and I'm like, well, how much more could I do if those people can't find a place to live?
Yeah.
Pardon me. How am I supposed to find a place to live with my income?
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, with the high cost of rents across the whole country, and let alone the stock that's actually available, that's going to be accessible to you also, and that's
Right.
another huge obstacle that
Yeah, and it's true. And so, and the other thing that's happened, so we are the only province that doesn't have any kind of rent control at all. Like there's other provinces that will say, oh, well, we don't have rent control, but they actually have more rent controls than we do in Alberta. And our Minister of Community and Social Services, Jason Nixon, was like, outright, no, rent controls are not happening. And so what happens here is a landlord, they can raise the rent once a year, only once a year. But here's where the no rent control, they can raise it whatever they want. They can double it if they want, and there's nothing to prevent them from doing that.
Wow.
So they don't go up by the percentage like in British Columbia.
There is no limit. It's whatever that landlord decides.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's
yeah. And
I was sorry.
You see it, Toronto.
Yeah, just hang on, Ellen.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I just a couple of days ago I saw an article, and it was saying that the MBM, the market basket measure, is actually higher now in Calgary than it is in Vancouver and Toronto.
I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just saw that. So
yeah, no, I'm actually leading into that because
perfect.
That just came out actually on Saturday. That article came out, and I was sitting I'm on my EDA board, and I was sitting talking to everybody, and I'm like, oh, look, I got a notification, and I looked on my phone, and but I wanted to talk about the rent control part of it too, because that's a big contributor to the unaffordable, the lack of affordability in Alberta, is that fact that landlords can it's just whatever you want. And sometimes it can be good because we have what you call market rent. So when we talk about market rent, we're not talking about it as versus market versus low income rent. right? We're talking about it as like based, you know how a stock market, it's what the market says and the market can dip depending on certain conditions. Well, that's what rents do in Alberta. So when traditionally, if we had a big boom in the oil industry, like there's a huge boom, then what would happen is everybody would start moving here for the high paying jobs in the oil sands, because you almost needed no education. I mean, some people but you could move here and get a job in the oil sands without a degree or anything, and make like, take home $5,000 a week, and crazy money. And so people would flock here. And what would happen is our housing would burst at the seams, and then rents would just go way up. Like I think, it must have been just under 20 years ago, my rent went up. I had a place, and I'd been in there it was 900 or 950. It had just gone up to 950. And then the management company had sold it to another management company. And the management company that was originally there, the 6 years I had been there, they actually just raised it a percentage. They were really good. This new management company came in, and like I was considered one of the original tenants, and they raised my rent. I get notice that they're going to raise my rent $600.
Oh my God.
After only getting marginal increases for the last 6 years, all of a sudden and I had to move. But a lot of the original tenants that had been there since the building was built also moved. And so they lost all these long-term tenants. And then what happened is, because that was the height of the boom, and at the height of the boom, you would have working homelessness. So people with really good jobs that couldn't find housing, right?
Yeah.
And then what would happen? But that's at the height. And whenever it got to that height, within a month or two, it would crash. And when it crashed, everybody left. And so then the rents dived down. And so even companies, if you were renewing your lease, you would go in to renew your lease, and you'd get a reduction in rent.
Wow, wouldn't that be something? Yeah.
So that's the upside, but the downside is there's no security in. I know that my rent's only going to raise this much per year, and I can budget every year after year. You know what I mean? And we have had traditionally higher wages out here. But another thing, like automation in the oil fields has changed that a little bit, because a lot of people that used to count on that work aren't being brought back. And it's not because we're not booming in the oil sector. It's because they've automated it and they don't need those people anymore. And so that's another thing that's happening. And so our wages have stagnated. So it used to be that we always had these high wages, but our wages aren't increasing out here as much as they used to. They're starting to stagnate. So even though we still have higher wages than the rest of the country, we're starting to become more in line with it. And then, and on top of that, like you said, that article, now I've gone on about how I found it interesting, because I've done the analysis of market basket measure. Like even what was it just last year, I did the analysis of market basket measure, what the calculation was of that versus what the calculation was for a livable wage. And in that CBC article, so the headline in the CBC article is that it now costs more for basic necessities in Calgary and Edmonton than it does in Vancouver and Toronto. And so that's the headline, and that's what it is. But when I looked at what they said the market basket measure was, what I found interesting is it was actually because when we looked at the analysis last year, it was the market basket measure line was 50% of what a living wage was.
Whoa.
And now when they've done the market basket measure, I don't know what they've done to beef up those calculations, but now they're in line with a living wage, which I find really interesting. I don't know if they heard me, if I've been screaming that loud, or if there's been other people on it, or they read all the articles I read of people criticizing the bark. But now, and just so I pulled up the stat here. And so the new data from 20 shows Calgary's annual market basket measure is now 55,771, and that's up from 51,861. Now, when we looked at it last year, there was like a $2,000 difference between favor, like Vancouver was Vancouver's living wage was $2,000 more than what Calgary's was per year, and now we are, so Vancouver is 55,206. It's 55,262 in Vancouver. Oh no, sorry, I'm screwing this up. Sorry.
No worries.
55,727 in Vancouver is what they're saying the market basket measure, which if you look at the living wage calculations from last year and you look at the market basket measure from last year, it's only a little bit more than what the living wage calculation was.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But but it's also, if you look, so we're 55,771, and you're like 50, give or take $50,000. Your market basket measure line is about $50 less than what it is. $50 less than what it is in Calgary. And in Toronto, another interesting, Vancouver is now actually more expensive than Toronto, because in Toronto, the wage was a little bit higher than Vancouver. And now it's 55,262 in Toronto, whereas it's 55,727 in Vancouver, and 55,225 in Edmonton. And Edmonton was actually significantly less than Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Toronto before. So it's gone up quite a bit too. And you know, when we're talking about it, you know, the fact that it's more expensive now to live in Calgary. I mean, a lot of people, everybody saw those Alberta is Calling ads. Now, I was talking to an NDP of them. They were kind of weren't sure. They thought people were just maybe moving here because of the higher wages. But the thing is those I wish I could find that stat out, because I was reading a stat a few months ago that said something like we were having 75 people a day coming to Alberta just from Vancouver and Toronto, like basically just from BC and Ontario, where these Alberta Callings ads went out, where they were basically talking about how much cheaper it was to rent, how much cheaper it was to buy a home, all of this. But our electricity rates have always been a little higher, because a lot of it comes from when Ralph Klein deregulated the electrical industry. The NDP got in and they put a cap on profits, basically, and so that they couldn't rate, so they couldn't make unhealthy margins that put people and kind of kept a cap on electricity rates. But then what happened was, when the UCP, the Frankenstein Party, I call them, just so anybody that hasn't listened to me, I call the UCP the Frankenstein Party because they're made up of, they're a merger of a whole bunch of different parts that don't really go together really well. They're some wild ideologies that don't really fit together. And they turned around and they did something called economic withholding. And I'm not as good as explaining this as Markham Hissop is explaining economic withholding. But I'm gonna give it a go here. So basically, what
Sure,
they can,
give it a shot.
yeah, I'm just gonna wing it
Just
here.
wing it. Just wing it.
They're basically, my understanding of it is that they can hold back a certain amount of the electricity to drive up the rates, so that they can make bigger profit margins. And this is what's so they so basically the UCP decided that they were going to give the green light to that kind of economic withholding, and now our electricity rates are astronomical. But not only that, it's not only that our actual rate of electricity, they've been allowed to raise the they've been allowed to raise the delivery rates. So you know that delivery charge.
Yes.
Well, people are getting delivery charges that are like $200 or $300, but their actual electricity usage is like $70.
Yeah, wow.
Right.
And right, so there's two things going on, and that's contributed to it. And then of course the ongoing issue with the fact that we don't have any rent controls at all. And yeah, and we're not building housing like they weren't maintaining, like there was a housing project in Bridgeland, which was just down the hill from where I was living. And it was completely decommissioned because what had happened was it had not been funded enough to keep up with the maintenance of it. So it kept going farther behind in disrepair, and they started having pipe problems and plumbing and infestation problems, and they were never able to keep up with the maintenance to the point that it ended up having to decommission because it wasn't livable. And then they had to move all those people up. And that's just one project. This is a problem in every province where provincial governments who are in charge of these things it's actually federal and provincial, but provincial governments generally look over social housing, and they're not giving the funds. The other thing is back when Stephen Harper was in, they got rid of 800,000 public housing units that were funded by the federal government. They got rid of 800,000 of them. Pierre Poilievre was the guy in charge at the time of the portfolio that housing fell under.
Oh, interesting.
That minister. And they sold off these 800,000 units across Canada. And then they also deregulated the system. So they deregulated the real estate market in a way that allowed some of these bigger investment firms and REITs to operate without any guardrails, basically. So that's why they are able. So they're actually squeezing. So these big companies are actually squeezing. They're squeezing the little guy, and it's not just because we like to, especially in Alberta, you see a lot of this, it's the landlords versus the tenants, but and a lot of smaller landlords out here get really scared when they hear about when they hear about rent controls, because they're barely making it, and a big part of it comes down to property taxes. Now, yes, I could get into a whole diatribe about our city council and our provincial government when it comes to that, but I wanted
to open the floor before you got going there.
I'm almost done.
Oh, okay.
I'm almost done. I gotta let me get this in because it's important. So basically, that's why I'm not getting into that other section there. And so basically, now I lost. Okay.
Sorry.
So I could get into the city council and the provinces, but it's not just that. It's the fact that they allowed these investment firms to come in. And so if you are a regular homeowner, right? Like you just a family and you want to buy your first home, right? And maybe you want to buy a home where you've got a suite that you can rent out to make a little extra. So you go and you try to bid on this house. Well, then comes one of these big like a pension fund or an investment banking firm or whatever, and they come along and they've got deep pockets, so they're outbidding you. And they're outbidding you so bad that they're driving up the price of all the real estate around them. Well, now you got the folks that been living in their house. They bought their house in the 60s or the 70s, and they've been living there. And what's happened is, their real estate, like the price of their home is going up, what the evaluation is. But with that, because property taxes are based on a percentage of what your home is worth, now they're driving up those property taxes so high by driving up the real estate market so fast and so high that those people now can't afford to pay their property taxes, and they're forced to sell. And guess who's there to swoop it in? And so this is
big vultures.
Right. And this goes back to the Harper era, and people like to blame it on the government immediately, but often governments will get in and do certain things, and we don't necessarily see the full fallout until decades later. And that's that's another thing that's happening to us right now. And that's my whole spiel.
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly comment on that, then we're going to send the comments to the floor. I mean, housing is, basically by I call them the big vultures. The way how I got that line was actually from the former UN rapporteur for housing, Lalani Farha. She taught me a lot about the commodities, and that housing is used as like a monopoly, right? It's and it's the small companies, the small landlords that are taking the brunt of it, because the big vultures come in and they prey on it, and they say, oh, you're having a financial troubles. Well, you know what? Let's buy it up from you. And now they're going to displace the whole region around. It's not just like, say, I'm on one road. It's
if they have to drive up the rents, then that means that their places are becoming more unaffordable. Because they have to drive up the rents just to maintain them, and then people can't afford them. And so it's just
causes a whole displacement of a whole region, and not just like a small little area. And then property taxes go up, and then it gets to a point where people can't afford that. I'm going to jump over to the floor. The first person I want to take questions from is MJ. Yes, I got your message. MJ, and right to you immediately, and then off to then I'm going to turn it over to Dan and over to Ellen, and then et cetera, et cetera.
Sorry, Cassandra, you're like awesome to listen to. You've got a lot of information, but you have the gift of gab, and we only got
I wanted to get all of that in. That's why I talk fast, just so you know. I talk really fast because I'm trying to cram it all in.
There's just one thing I really want to do before I jump into your story and comment on your story about last. I don't play poker because I'm always making expressions, just so you know. But I really would like to, because I have a lot of people attack me online because they don't understand what's going on with the CDB. And I just really want people to understand the real timeline. So even this morning in the committee, Kamal Kara said, quote, that the CDB has to come into force by June 2024. And that's when the clock starts ticking for that year on the regulations.
That's on the regulations, yes.
So that'll take it. They have to have the regulations in place by June 2025. And then I would think, that's what she said this morning, right out of her mouth.
No, the regulations have to be in by 2025. Then they have another year before they could have to roll it out. Or 2024, I meant. 2024 is the regulations, and then another year for the money to roll out.
Okay.
So if you go listen on the committee this morning on HUMA, you'll see that I'm right. It's 2024 June.
Well, so it's written into the regulation. It's already written into the legislation part of the bill that they have till 2024 to get so they're breaking their own. If she's saying that, she's either she misspoke, or they're intending to break their own law that they made.
Well, law or not, that's what they are intending to do. June, right after it went into royal assent, June of 2023, it was within a week. Carla Quattro went on the news and said that at the earliest is going to be in our pockets is the end of 2024. At the earliest, hopefully.
Well, and that's back to the regulations. The deadline in the legislation is the regulations it's not money in your pocket. It's just the regulations that have to be done by June of 2024.
Yeah, so
And then once the regulations are in, they've got another year to finish and get money in your pocket.
2025 is when they want the regulations in. So, and then there needs to be a budget after that, I would think. So anyway, just watch the committee meeting from this morning.
I mean, we've written letters and that's the response we've gotten directly from the minister's office, what I just said. So just so you know.
Yeah, so it's right out of her mouth. So just watching, you'll see.
Well, no, but so is what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying she's misspoke.
Yeah.
And you wanted to talk about the DERB petition as well, MJ?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a petition out that ends February 1st. It's derb.ca/4667. And it's to have the budget the benefit and pay us back pay for the CDB.
With my business shit. 3 fucking hour Zoom, 3-hour Zoom meeting, bro.
Ellen,
Listen,
can
we
you
had to reconvene 3
Yeah, I'm
times.
hearing a lot of interference.
Yeah. I think Ellen has his mic, maybe he mute his mic there.
Yeah. Alan.
Alan.
She was like, I was so
Alan.
weird. She was dressed up as a Christmas elf.
Oh, dear.
She had fucking lights all around her.
Well, we'll come back to the DERB part in just a second. Alan, can you hear us?
I'm gonna try to mute his mic here. Just 1 second.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
I've got him muted there.
Oh dear.
It's if everybody please sign the petition. It's derb.ca/E4667. And it's to push them to budget the benefit finally and to pay us back pay on the CDB to Royal Ascent date, which is June something 2023.
Yeah, that sounds, I've seen that post and I really encourage people to really retweet it, like it, repost it out, to quote tweet it, get this storming out on social media. If you have Facebook, pop it onto there, copy paste it. Let's just slam it out there. It's so important. Even though the finance minister may say, well, we don't have the resources. No, they do have the resources to do it. And as soon as I saw it, I was always ready to lose it. I was like, you don't have the resources. Okay. First thing I thought, MJ, I thought, is this an early April Fool's joke? Are you kidding me?
Well, their computer system probably can't handle it. They need to upgrade it. No, sorry.
That's like the BC minister said. You have to wait till a new computer system comes out, a state-of-the-art one. I thought, first thing I thought was I needed another cup of coffee when I heard that one.
Like a string of code, right?
Or something. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, back to you, MJ, on the about the DERB.
Yeah, no, I'm done with DERB. I just wanted to comment a little bit on my experience, very vaguely, but more how it coincides with Cassandra's experience. I became disabled in 2019. I worked full-time all my life. I paid taxes all my life. I had savings. I was doing quite well, and now I'm just financially screwed. And I just found out, through that whole process, it's so discriminatory how they treat us. And I feel like I'm just fighting for the right to exist. You have to be so resilient to be disabled, to jump through all their little hoops to find out after jumping through their hoops for months and months and months that there's really nothing even there. I wanted to just say that I find that the landlords used to want disabled people renting off of them because it was guaranteed income every month. Mm-hmm. Now they don't want to because we get paid so little that they're like, are we even going to get paid? I would really like to see the government actually pay the landlords directly for everyone, and then they would have to pay the right amount. That's what I would.
I totally echo that. Sonia and myself, before we moved to Victoria, we were scrambling around trying to find the right housing. We should have, one of those hindsights, woulda, shoulda, coulda, but didn't. We had the one place, we guaranteed we had the place. But here's the catch on that, MJ, is the landlord says, well, I need the money within 5 business days. Okay, you've got the place. If you want it, I need the money in my hand in 5 days. Otherwise, I'll have to give it to somebody else. At the same time, we actually told this other landlord, we applied, and so we had both places. We were approved for both places. Now, the other place was brand new. So we said, well, we said to the manager, like, well, what do you think? And I go, well, we want to look around and see what else we can find first. We should have went with the other place. It was a lot less price. It was built in the late 90s. So it was kept up really well. It's still a good building. But we went with the brand new one because why not? I mean, a little bit more in dollar value, but why not go with the new one? It was a nightmare after that. We lost our place due to management incompetence. They had a ultimate, what's the word I'm looking for? They had a pre-existing mentally, idea of they wanted to flip units over to make the maximum profit as commission for themselves. So they cleared up 2 floors. They overestimated themselves also because they underbid the cost of introductory rent prices. So we thought, wow, okay. And the going price was higher. So they were desperate to get them in there. So we didn't know. We only had access to 2 floors, 3rd floor and 4th floor. So we had to run amok. Now, nobody living there, we thought, and okay. We're weird though, MJs. We didn't have access to the 1st and 2nd floor. So there was some underlying issues going on where the manager was just desperate to make maximum profit for herself and also for the management company. They said they would rent to persons with disabilities, no problem. This is the income. I said, hey, like this is what the government's given us going forward. The ministry even said, this is the amount, Brent, you need to show the landlord going forward. Now, isn't that ironically now, the actual amount is actually the same amount now than it was when we first got the place back in 2020. Same amount now. But they took away the supplement back then, but now it's like the same amount. So anyway, what I guess the moral of the story, what I'm trying to say is we should have went with the lesser one, but the manager was asking like 50 questions. Like it was just like accessibility wise, are you going to have trouble climbing stairs? I mean, our elevator does work, but it has a tendency of breaking down. We're going to get it fixed. The other question was, we don't deal with third-party payments. I said, well, get the government to send a payment directly into you. Nope, I won't deal with government. Check or money order. I don't take cash, so check or money order. How about debit? Nope, don't take debit. Okay, how about credit card? Nope, don't take credit card. Okay, so they didn't want to deal with the landlord, and which I think is against the human rights, because I think that the recipient should have that option of being able to pay the rent how they want to get it paid. Yeah, over to you, MJ. Yeah. When you want to chime in on that one. Yeah, but getting to that though, I mean, it's that they refused. They didn't want anything to do with government. I have a feeling that it was more of a discriminatory thing. I mean, even though we had the place, but it's like, why wouldn't you want to deal with the government? Guaranteed, the money's coming to you. I mean, we always pay our rent anyway, but it was easier.
You mentioned human rights, Brent, and wasn't it yesterday? Yesterday was something about human rights.
It was the Human Rights International Day for Human Rights.
Yeah. Do you happen to have the? Do you happen to have the? Do you happen to have the press release handy? Because it was just a nothing burger.
Yeah.
I don't know if you actually have you gave the press release to me. I'll see if I can find it. But it was a complete nothing burger. It was just stupid.
Well, the International Day of Person with Disabilities was also December 6th or 7th, and it was nothing.
Well, it was our prime minister who posted it out about the Human Rights Day. I tell you, the quote tweets on his post, there was nothing positive under that. It was a lot of disabled Canadians across Canada chimed into it, said, "Oh, like violation. I mean, housing is a human right. Food security is a human right. Having your medications is a human right." But the government says, "Oh, well, we're going to expand MAID to people who have mental illness in March of 2024. But because, hey, we're going to, no problem. You'll be guaranteed if you're suffering." But here's the thing I was reading, and one of our guests, I'm still want to get Neil on about that, because he's really on that one topic, is regarding made. Okay. And like it's saying, well, the underlying issue, condition, apparently governments are saying the underlying issue is, oh, it was their illness that caused it. No, it wasn't. No, it was deliberately not giving people the proper resources. I mean, I know it's a slippery slope topic, but I know that Neil Belanger, he just dives right into it. He just throws it out there. He'll call a spade, right? So
yeah, I don't know if you want me to read a little bit of
no,
it's just like when I was reading it, because you sent it the other day and I read it and I was like, this is like the epitome of a nothing burger, you know. And anyway, it says exactly it says Nikki Sharma, Attorney General, and Mabel Elmore, Parliamentary Secretary for Anti-Racism Initiatives, have released a joint statement on Human Rights Day. Today marks the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, first proclaimed on December 10th, 1948. Under that declaration, we accept that all people, regardless of their origins, cultures, identities, or abilities, are afforded the same universal rights. It's clear that in the last 7.5 decades, we have made considerable progress, insert laugh track here, as a society in recognizing and defending human rights. In BC, our goal is to always strive to give all people, regardless of their diverse backgrounds and experiences, the same rights and respect. You know, I love when they just toss around words like rights and respect. Anyway, we share a collective obligation to not just champion, but also to defend the rights of all people to be treated with dignity and respect. That's why in BC, we have launched supports to advance human rights in the province. This includes actions such as reestablishing the independent BC Human Rights Commission, providing funding to launch a racist incident helpline, and continuing our work to develop anti-racism legislation to create more equitable access to government programs and services. And this is your favorite line here, Brent, because it says, "But we know that the job is never done." There's always more to do, Brent. We know
there's always more to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to read out what our Prime Minister posted yesterday for Human Rights Day, just so that people understand that what human rights is all about in Canada. Canada will always defend human rights because we believe all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. This Human Rights Day, we reaffirm and believe, and we recommit to building a world where human rights are protected and respected. So I'm gonna turn it to the floor here and have people comment on that.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It's like when I look, I always give this speech about how far we've come. We've come a long way.
Oh, we have, but
we've made huge strides, but it is hugely frustrating, even though this government has probably done more than any government in the last 20 years as far as trying to move things in the right direction. When they fall short, when they finally decide to do something and they fall short on how they're doing it, it is because they're not meeting their human rights obligations.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's where the frustration is because if you're actually looking at the human rights, if you're looking at the actual human rights aspect and the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities then you compare that against where we are, even though we've come a long way, we're not even meeting our own charter, what our own charter says, but then they're sitting there saying that they are. And I think that's what the frustration is. It's frustrating for all of us because it's like okay, yeah, you've definitely done, like, you did more than anything that happened under Harper, more than anything that happened under Martin or Chrétien or any of them. None of them have done much as this government has. And I remember all of them, but you still are not meeting your human rights targets. So to say that you are is and then you lose support because of it, because then people are like,
because it actually affects their family, it affects their family, their friends, their relatives, and they all
I mean,
say, oh my gosh.
I think the government would get more kudos for what they've done if they say, look, we're not quite there at meeting our human rights targets on these issues.
But
we've come this far and we're really trying to get there, and we're much closer than we've ever been. Would be more a genuine comment than
I think
that.
So. I think that if they were to at least admit, hey, like, yeah, like we screwed up. I mean, how hard is it to say, yeah, look, we screwed up. We know we have to do something better. We're going to implement this in as a floor, right? And we're going to build from that point on. We want lived experience people, not just organizations. And I'm not going to throw the organizations under the bus, shall we say? But we want to have every disabled person who are able to tell us what they want, lived experience, and then build that foundation up and build the confidence of the government. I mean, people are going to say, yeah, the government is actually really serious now. Like, they're actually going to enact the UN CRPD, which I think was 13 or 14 years ago that it was enacted. But it's like my old talking point of spaghetti that I talked about, right? Well, we boil the water. That's all I gotta do. You said boil it, but I just leave all the ingredients out. I'm actually curious to hear what Dan and Alan have to say on this too. I know haven't.
You're curious as to what I have to say about human rights. All right, here we go, buddy.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Right off the hop, housing is a human right? So that's some of you know I was homeless, so I can sympathize with what Cassandra has gone through, right? And it's just a fact of life that the cost of living and the high prices for maintenance and all that such, they get passed on, right?
Yeah.
As per the CDB, I rely on every single one of you guys for the federal stuff because I'm dumb as a stump when it comes to the feds, but provincially and municipally I'm good, right? It just seems to me that the CDB has been treated like dangling a carrot from a stick, but they actually forgot to tie the fucking carrot on. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So like we just got to get back to basics and help each other out where we can, and just remember that there's enough room for all of us because we all have something to contribute. And sometimes things get out of hand, and I myself am in that boat, for which I always send my apologies. In fact, I got the swear jar down there today. But like push comes to shove, like you don't have a roof over your part of my language, MJ. I don't know how you are with the language. But, okay, great. Because if you don't have a roof over your fucking head, you are no good to anybody. You cannot be productive on a personal level or professional level. So until they get that drilled through their heads, and until we stop using singular narratives as opposed to getting together, then all you can chalk it up to is what Neil's Christmas tree there looks like. Because you ain't going to get anything different unless we work together. It's that simple.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, Dan, because the way I look at CDB right now, I remember way back when I had the Twitter spaces going. Remember, I used to talk about the CDB. I think there was a couple guests I had on. They're like, Brent, how could you say that? And I what about the CDB? Because I said I think they're going to use it down the road as an election ploy. I said I had that gut instinct, but I didn't want to say it because I mean I'm there to advocate with everybody else to we got to get this money pumped out to people. But I had a gut instinct. I'm thinking they're going to delay the hell out of this. And I was talking to one of my members in BC of Parliament, and like, what? No, don't say that. No, I go, no, my gut instinct tells me that they're going to do this. But
well, because that's what they've done the whole time with this is they've used this
as a carrot
to get the disability community to vote for them. And I think in this is an important opportunity.
Yeah.
When it comes to actually rolling the money out into people's bank accounts right before an election is going to be called, I think we've got an opportunity there to say, if you don't do this, if we do start writing letters and say the disability of the community as a whole is getting together, and if you don't do this, we're going to vote NDP. We're going to put all our liberal votes to NDP because we're the disability community and we have that power. We're, of course, not going to put it with the Conservatives. So the only other viable party that we can put it with, because the Conservatives will just take it all away. And so we don't want that. But and I know there's some people that are on the fence, but in the end, if we voted as a bloc and said, hey, if we could make a movement to get people to vote as a bloc and say, you know what, if the Liberals try to dang that carrot and put it off till right before the election, then we can turn around and say, if you do that, we're going to vote. I mean, the horrible thing is it's really hard to get the disability community to singularly agree on something like this. But if we could get it, that would be a strong carrot to actually say, hey, you don't get our votes. The NDP is going to get them. Bye-bye.
I could get a whole patch of carrots and start growing them because I get some fresh ones, because those carrots that the Liberals are dangling right now are they're rotten. Those carrots are just, they need to be thrown out. They need to be recycled in the garden.
I know. Yeah.
Alan, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I'll come back and get your take too, MJ, on this. I would get Alan's take on this. Where are you at, Alan, on this? Where do you see the CDB DERB going with I know that the finance said basically DERB's not happening. I think that if we keep putting pressure on them, basically how the narrative, before I get your take on it though, the narrative that I hear that the finance minister says, no DERB, nope, because that's just not happening, we can't make another program. No, it's going to delay the Canada Disability Benefit. But I think if we put pressure out there and keep going, nope, you can't silence us out. Sorry, that's not part of the obligation here. Go for it, Alan.
In all honesty, I think we banged that DERB drum too long now. It's lost its potency. I think we need a whole different tact. I don't know what that is. I would say if we're going to make a stink, we almost have to make it internationally so that the countries watching Canada kind of boo a little bit metaphorically, because if there's one thing you learn about Liberal governments, they don't like looking disgraceful on the public stage. And if you make them look disgraceful on the public stage by attacking the human rights aspect of it on a global stage, they might be pressured to move the CBD forward, bring it up, pivot it, but banging the DERB drum, and I love Benita for doing it, and Mike Maurice, but I think that drum's been banged so much that we're just sounding redundant. It's I don't even see it on the table. I think the gatekeeper, as far as the CBD not coming out as soon as it is Freeland. I honestly think she doesn't want it. She's trying to find whatever ways they can to kick the can down the block. Otherwise, they would have found funding. That's my take on it.
Yeah, like skipping the rock, throwing the little rock, and I used to love doing that as a kid, throwing the rock into the ocean.
As far as the CBD, the Canadian Disability Benefit, if we find a way to get a big enough voice to make Canada look bad on the public's stage by other countries, by the whatever, and we bring enough attention to that, where we make enough stink where the human rights, I forget the organization it is, the big one that clarifies human rights.
The UN, the United
the
Nations.
The UN. If you don't, if we can tap into the UN in a vocal way that makes Canada
Can I make a quick
like,
comment about that? Just really quick.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was
so,
MIA for a bit. Sorry about
so
that.
no, that's okay.
Yeah.
So the issue with that is DERB is the idea behind DERB is an interim benefit, and with I mean, the time it would take, because in order to, you have to have an intervener. So we have specific people within Canada that can be interveners with the UN and put it forward, but we have to exhaust all our own bureaucracies before we can do that. So we have to actually take it to the Supreme Court, which is a long process in itself. And so that won't actually, unfortunately, that's not a path that would be reasonably get us there. But the other thing I will just quickly point out is that, they said, if you look at the heating oil, and it's not related, these are two kind of separate causes. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is it's something they said they would never do. And they said they would never exempt anybody from the carbon tax ever. And then somebody came and made a case and said, look, I understand why you're doing it, but in this particular case, this is the only group of people that are not getting that aren't getting back more from the rebates than everybody else is getting more back than they spend, but these people aren't even coming close. And they made a case for it. And so what it comes down to is they will say no until they're blue in the face. They will say no until they say yes. And so just the fact that they're saying no over and over and over again, I know it's redundant and it gets really, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be no, especially if they're going to take to 2025. I think there's other ways that we can shame them by getting media attention and getting in the media. And I mean, ultimately, that's what raises public awareness. And that's what actually will have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time, rather than trying to go through. I mean, there's other things, and I that's a whole other show. I'll just shut up now.
I guess what I'm getting at, Cassandra, is I think DERB's a good idea. I mean, everybody I've heard agrees with it, whether it's on Twitter or on here. But my gut feeling is that we would get the CBD before we actually get DERB. I think just because of the language of the way Freeland talks, the way that the liberals dismiss and virtual signal, or whatever the term is, and they
virtual signaling.
And like, you take Bonita, she gets up and she makes another push, another vocal shout out, and then in question period, and as soon as the liberals get up, what is the thing they do? Well, we'd like to thank the NDP speaker for that question, blah 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 blah, and they do anything but actually come up with an answer, right? Yeah. I think we've seen it over and over and over again. It's like they got this. Oops, we're in the hot seat. Let's come up with a vague statement. It's over.
Well, Alan, you see, it's just a script, and I just read from that script, and they say, "Well, yeah, we're going to be launching the Canada Disability
disabled people need blah blah blah, and yada yada yada, and such etc etc etc." But they never actually. They're saying no without using the word no in the sentence.
Yeah. It's just
so my would I say that I think DERB would come, the likelihood of DERB coming out before the Canadian Disability Benefit comes out is very high. Right? Yeah. I just think we've been banging that drum in this context so long now that it's lost its piss and vinegar.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not against DERB. I'm not against DERB at all.
Neil there, and
I was just gonna say that on December 19th we have Mike Maurice coming on the show with the petition creator Jeffrey Salisbury, right? And
Yeah.
one thing I always appreciate about Mike, he's been on the show lots, on the podcast lots, and one thing I always appreciate about Mike is that he never sugarcoats anything. So if he really believes that that something's not going to happen, like he's told us several times very candidly on the podcast, like he says, I don't see an appetite for it, or whatever. So I'll be really interested to hear his revised take on things, and I have a feeling it's going to be just as kind of pessimistic, really. I mean, because he does speak the truth. He doesn't sugarcoat it, like I said. And so I'll be interested to hear what his revised take on the whole DERB and the CDB is on the 19th.
Yeah, I remember when we had the former Minister for Social Development and Poverty Reduction in British Columbia on a few times there, and his take regarding the CDB and DERB at the time. And the same thing, they were cautiously optimistic, and some other guests too that were the same way on it. I think, and I'll get MJ's take and Dan's take on this too. But it's, I think that if we, yeah, I mean, you're right, Alan. I mean, I think that, the drum is, it's, I think the politicians up there are the ones that don't want it to happen. I think that they're kind of.
Okay, so let me wind back to like last Christmas, where we were really pushing for the DERB, and we were all in the Twitter space, and we were doing this, that, and the other. I think we were drumming up. We were getting lots of traction. We were trending like crazy, but I think the politicians on the Liberal Party have just gone. They're now going la 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 la. I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you catch them off guard? And we need to politically catch them off guard again.
Yeah, like I agree with
them.
Yeah, I agree with Ellen. Like, because we all remember that the DERB actually came out of your Twitter Spaces, right?
It did.
That was something that came out of your Twitter Spaces, and it was kind of like, you remember when Cabbage Patch Kids was like all the rage, back last Christmas, the DERB was kind of all the rage, and now it's just kind of becoming oversaturated, and everyone's like, oh well, I don't really care about the DERB anymore. It's kind of become the old passe Cabbage Patch Kid a little bit.
Well, yeah, in my observation too is I think that especially when the politicians say, "Oh, well, it's not going to happen," they're shutting down the debate about it. I think that if we ramp it up and we really gift wrap it, and maybe in a different way, we'll gift wrap it.
I was going to say Twitter only goes so far.
Yeah.
I think what's really important is people with disabilities getting in front of traditional media.
Yep.
And telling their story of why it's important. Telling the story of their family member, because those traditional media sources will actually get more traction, can even get traction back going on Twitter. But it can also, it brings it in, because there's a lot of people that watch the 6 o'clock news every night, or they watch that one national news thing every night.
That's what
and they don't watch, or they watch like maybe a higher profile podcast that's not related to disability that they wouldn't normally watch. And those are the people that you want to get the attention to now, because the disability community's got it. We got the politicians, but if we can get those other people, because it's the general public that you got to reach, and they're not all on Twitter. So unfortunately, Twitter can be an echo chamber that way, and that's the downfall of it.
Analogy.
I agree with you on that.
I'll be respectful. I was chatting with my mom, and she was like, "Well, if you're struggling, you can go to the food bank. They have everything you need." And she comes from this not an ignorant state, but what a society snapshot of what the older generation, and she's 80. But a lot of people, like from 60 to 80, have this euphoric, out-of-date state that the food bank is they've got vegetables and bread and meats and chicken and blah 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 blah, like it's a little grocery store. It's not. I mean, but and then I'm trying to tell her, I'm like, you can only go now once a month. You can't double dip to a different. In a lot of cities, you now can't double dip to a different food bank. You can't go to St. Angelo's food bank and then go to St. Mike's food bank week after. And the donation levels have dropped so badly that it's first come, first serve. The lineups are around the building, and I was trying to kind of instill that. My mom, like, it's not what the food banks are not what you think they are.
They're not meant to be there as a permanent fixture in our economy. They were
that society globe. So using that and getting back to what Cassandra was saying is, unless we get the disability community in the minds of the people watching the news at 6 o'clock, we're spinning our wheels on Twitter.
Exactly. It seems like it gets buried in Twitter now, more and more of all there's so much other propaganda going on around the world of different world events that are happening, and it's like the derb and anything else. It's all getting kind of like going like, what? Yeah. I think the news. I like that idea.
If I was running, if I had the resources right now to run my Another Nobody project the way I want to run it across Canada or even across the province, I would do it where every disabled person got a minute or two to tell their story in a video, clip them all together, do some outdoor, unhoused, untented stuff, even just so it was like 5 minutes or even 2 minutes of capture. And I don't mean just in one city. You got to do it like get a whole bunch of people, whether we like each other or not, or we agree on this or on the same page, or we're in the same clique. It's got to be across Canada. I'm Joe. I'm unhoused because I can't afford the rent on the benefits I'm given, but I'm being told by social service workers that if I can't afford to live, I can take MAID. You have got to make the public disgusted to the point where they're blowing up their MPP's phone call. Why am I hearing that disabled people are starving and living in sheds?
Well, again, though, that's why we've come up with this. This is why we've come up with the new disability stories. I mean, this is what we're doing today. Disability stories. We're sharing disability stories, and that's the only way you're going to get traction on something like this. Just to share all these stories, bring them forward.
I don't have the video capability or the video editing knowledge, but if we could get 30-second, 40-second clips of every disabled person across Canada, province to province, coast to coast, to make some collage video where even if someone's talking, standing outside a tent city, whatever it may be, real gritty stuff, and then get it out to the press.
Well, they can send it out to us, and we can put it out there on YouTube also, and then give it to media, news stations, and then they can pick it up, and then they can broadcast.
Well, here's an idea. If I mean, anybody that's listening here now, or if anybody, again, we always say that anybody can always share the video out or comment or whatever.
Well,
if anybody's listening, they can send a clip. They can send clips to me or to you, Brent. And like you said, we'll put a whole bunch of clips together. If people want to put send us a bunch of clips, I'll put them all together. I have the software. I can put all the clips together, and I'll publish a little video of a whole bunch of clips, and we'll put it out there.
Yeah.
It kind of set guidelines like, please state where you live. Hi, I'm Joe. I live in London, Ontario. This is how I feel about being disabled.
Yeah.
Keep it to under a minute, maybe two. And yeah, I would say keep it to under 2 minutes. And state where you live, state where you live, state what you're living on, and a brief, like I mean brief. Even if you got to rehearse it a couple times.
And then he takes the call.
And then he takes the call.
Disabilities and their allies.
Hello, Mr. President.
Hello,
and then
Mr. President.
we put in some what do they call those? Brett, they're like text boxes where it's like a frame of just text facts and just throw them in there. Over 65% of, or 1 in 10 people in each town live on these incomes, no fault of their own.
Yeah,
Doug Ford says the best thing you can do for a disabled person is give them a job. Well, how is someone supposed to have a job if they're paralyzed from the waist down? Or
see, that's the old narrative. Like the politicians would always say, just get them a job, right? I mean, a job doesn't define.
What I'm getting at, Brent, is we got to put what Pierre just put out about that little documentary he made. We got to create a disabled documentary.
Yeah, like
that's
housing.
About 5 minutes long. That looks really professional, raw but brushed.
Well, that's one thing that I know, Neil. We've actually discussed that too recently. Actually, I know you and I have discussed that too. Ellen is getting that out there, and I truly think that getting our voices heard by media, also like news hour stations. I think we're all onto that. I think that's a really good take.
I suggest instead of having a Zoom that goes up on YouTube, is that we need to have a Zoom think tank meeting that's not going to get posted, so that we can make some notes and come up with an announcement and share the shit out of it. Share it on TikTok, share it on Instagram, share it on Facebook, share it in the groups on Facebook.
Well, I know
the calling out thing, so that and there's that young lady that's on she's on First You Make Thieves, and then something, I forget what her handle is on Twitter. But she's on TikTok like crazy. She's a single mom that's going through chemo, and she's very vocal on TikTok and Twitter like crazy. I mean, I almost see her in my feed almost every other day, if not. Anytime there's a big post by Kamel, what's her name? The lady that took over. I can't remember her name. I'm drawing blanks here.
Kamala.
Yeah, she'll fire off right as soon as any of them do a little press photo thing. She's commenting on it or requoting it, but she's all over TikTok.
Okay. Hey, Ellen, I just want to get MJ's take on this.
Oh yeah, I'm hogging. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I find it very interesting on your.
Yeah, you look sharp. I love your suit.
Yeah.
Ward 8, Toronto, 2026.
I wanted to comment way back when Cassandra said, and Ellen, that they're going to use this CDB as an election carrot. I think we need to get a Facebook group that's titled something like Congregation. We need to get all the disabled on this one group. There's so many groups with 1,000 here and 1,000 there.
Yeah.
Get everybody congregate. I don't know how to make a Facebook group.
I have a page called.
I love that idea, MJ, and I'll tell you, the issue has been, because I've been in different groups. I've been admin on groups. I've been involved in groups, and what you always get certain people that they just want to talk and they just want to talk and play, and that's valid. That's really valid. But when people start talking about doing something, they just don't want to be a part of. And then you get other people that just can't agree on. And so what ends up happening, like we've tried, like me and multiple other people, we've tried to get everybody together, and it is this unifying people is been a challenge, especially on Facebook, by the way.
Right. But
yeah,
I think it needs to be titled that something like, we just want everybody in a group, so we got you all counted. Something like that. That is the purpose of this group, not to really go talk on a different group. This is just, we can get everybody in this group. The other thing is, what was I going to say now? I totally lost it. I think once June hits and the regulations aren't in place, you're going to see a lot more people on board. That's what I think.
Yeah. And having a dedicated spot where they all come to, and it's I like the idea about the Zoom too. Like we do our segments that we do, and we lived experience stories on Mondays. Fridays are a variable right now. We launched the open mic. We'll see where that goes. Like, I mean, it's going, but we'll see where it goes. But if we need to change that open mic eventually into a dedicated spot just for, whatever Neil and I decide, if it's something that we're talking about exactly right now, if it's like about current events that are affecting discussion stuff, affecting people with disabilities in Canada, then we will do that. Like, and the other times are set for guests that come on during the week. So we can restructure things accordingly. I do like the idea of the narrating, of really getting the stories out there. I think that's so important about,
If you want to put pressure on Liberals and make them look kind of like they're not doing anything in the public eye as far as this topic, because everybody out there who's not in disability groups has a family member, has a close friend, even if they're not disabled themselves. Maybe they run a small landscaping business, and there's that really sweet guy up the street named Joe who brings them coffee, and because and or something like that, and he's got some disability, and they love him to pieces because he hasn't got a mean bone in his body, and he just wants to push it. What's that word? Play forward, right? So he brings the lunch guy's water on a hot summer day, something, right? He's doing something. Maybe he's taking pictures of a car lot for some guy who's running a small car lot, something. So they're out there and they watch the news. They watch Globe News. They watch the National. They watch CN News. And if you can do something like what Pierre did with that little documentary thing he made, we go out and make our own documentary across Canada with people's voices, put it into a 5-minute segment video with some real facts, like using Doug Ford's quote against him. Oh, they said the best thing they could do for a disabled person is to give them a job. Where's my job? I'm applying. Where is it, Doug? Hey, can I come work for you like your nephew did? Something, a little bit of humor in there.
You know what you do, Alan, is you have him say that one little snippet, and then you have him swallow that bee right after he says it. You have him swallow the bee.
He got a mouthful.
But that's
all
why,
pun intended. You have to
clipping. That's why clipping all the stories.
You have to do what Pierre Poilievre just did in a 5-minute segment, but it's all disabled people. Like, that's kind of how I would do my teaser for Another Nobody Mean Streets if I had the funding to roll with it.
Well, if we put like a little meme at the beginning, you see, and this is what happens.
It's a trailer. It's a trailer. You give them a documentary trailer of 5 minutes, and it's people with disabilities. And if they can't verbally speak, they can hold up a bulletin board. Maybe one of their family members can put in marker what they want to say, and they could just hold it in front of the camera
Exactly.
and nod. That's
Yeah.
fine, because that's a clip. That's something that can go into that 5-minute segment. As long as you know where
coming soon to a Canada near you.
Yeah.
You,
And
you
we'll get
want to
to
make the public.
Yeah,
You want to
Alan, we're
give the
gonna get
public.
Dan's take on this too.
You
Dan,
want to
what's
give the
your
public, like
take on?
what Cassandra said. You want to give the public a sense of ick, a kind of sense of ick they can't get rid of. They can't get. It'll keep them up at night. Then they're on the phone to their MPPs.
Sure.
Dan is laughing too hard. He can't talk now.
Yeah.
I gotta burst out of this fucking buttons, man. Just 3 things very quickly. Number 1, you need the lived experience at the table.
Yes.
The reason why I put this stupid thing on is to show everybody that you need to be hardcore. You need to bring your stuff forward, but at the same time, you have to be, as much as you want to kick him in the throat, you have to be able to approach somebody and say, "Good afternoon, Mr. Trudeau. My name is Dan. I'm here to talk to you today about the CDB. How you doing?" At the same time, you got to be able to fucking take this shit off, throw it aside, right?
Yeah.
And tell these people that, like, are you fucking retarded? So first off, very quickly, number 1, Pierre Poilievre and his band of assholes the other day not voting for the food programs.
Oh, I know.
That right there, I'm willing to listen to people, but that right there, there's nothing he can do to get me to vote for him now. So my ears are all open for everybody else. And here's a little tidbit in parting ways. I know we're going to have goodbyes very soon because we're cutting into Neil's bedtime here. Here's another thing you never hear people mention. You always hear people mention, oh, Doug Ford, his nephew, his brother Rob. Did you know that one of his MPPs was actually the former mayor of the area where his cottage is?
Interesting. Wow.
So for everybody to put that shit together, to work together and work on stuff like the CDB, like housing, like issues for seniors and RGI units or ownership, like the other MJ would say, it has to be a work in progress together, right? Because if there's too many singular narratives, it's all just like, it's all, you could say, you could have Doug Ford come out right now, and Alan will agree with this. You could have Doug Ford or even stupid Danielle Smith out there in your way, Cassandra. And you can have, you know what I mean? You could have both of them come out right now and say, Cassandra, Dan, Alan, Brent, Neil, everybody, right? MJ, I'm giving all your provinces $50 billion each.
Oh, they say that all the time and they don't do anything. They actually say they're throwing money at things.
Yeah, the carrot.
They've been telling us that, like, I should tell you about that. That's back to the housing, because I can tell you a story about that.
That's what people aren't getting, right? They keep saying that. And yet Doug Ford was there in 2018. They didn't vote him out. He was there in 2022. They didn't vote him out. You know what I'm saying? Then they went and elected Danielle Smith. And I don't care what planet you're from. If you think Trudeau is worse than Pierre Poilievre, then you
there's something wrong in your head.
Yeah. So it's all of us together with the combined efforts. Never make me wear a tie again. Okay. See ya.
I loved it. No, I want to comment on that because, one of the things they've done out here, and I'm bringing it back to housing, because when he brought up Daniel, so they actually kept saying, like, I called the minister's office and I had them yell this at me. They keep doing press releases about they're throwing all these millions and billions at fixing the housing situation. And in fact, when I called agencies, individual agencies that are supposed to be the ones receiving this money, I was literally every single time, like, I met with hysterical, when I say, what about this money that you're supposed to be getting? I'm getting hysterical laughter from the person on the other end of the phone, because they're saying it, but it's not just that they haven't received the money. Generally, when governments make a press release and say we're throwing millions at something, they're already talking to the organizations that are going to be receiving that money to do that thing. And they're already been in talks. They haven't even been in talks. They got the same press release and they haven't gotten any money, and nobody's come to the table with them to say, this is how we're going to do it. It's just air. It's just hot air. The money actually isn't coming that we can find.
It was either earlier this year or last year. a lot of people don't know this either. Toronto actually got $300 million to go towards housing from the federal government. And where did that money go? It went to one development on the southwest corner of Bathurst and Bloor called the Honest Edge Development. And it made no apartments for no homeless people, no nothing. So by the time the media doesn't play that because it's not a good news story, right? It's not a feel-good news story to help a homeless person, right? So people don't hear about that and they go, well, why are you asking for more money, Olivia Chow, or this person or that person? Why are you asking for more? Because you guys gave us the money and fucking put it somewhere else. You didn't put it towards what it, like this Eglinton Crosstown thing,
and that's
right?
why
like
that's why the feds are working with the municipalities, is because of exactly that reason. Like, all the premiers are complaining, and it's like, well, if you actually put the money you were given for housing towards housing, then they wouldn't have to work with municipalities, because you cut funding to municipalities while you're getting billions or millions or billions from the federal government to do housing. And instead you cut money to municipalities, so they instead of giving them the housing money so they can actually build the housing we need. And so the government said, okay, fine, we'll work with the municipalities then. Sorry about your luck.
Well, that's what's going on in BC right now too, is the housing isn't getting built fast enough. So now the province has now passed legislation saying that they're now going to tell the municipalities to build 4 to 6 plex housing on one lot.
Oh, we just changed our city of Calgary just changed the zoning
Yeah, they
to
just
allow for stuff like that, where and we got the NIMBYs all up in arms because they're worried about how it's going to affect, and when they realized, oh, you don't, just because it's rezoned doesn't mean you have to do that, you can leave your property the way it is. Then they went, oh, but we're going to have new people move into our neighborhood. Then it's like, oh no.
I came up with this idea. I floated it out maybe a couple of weeks back, where I thought that for anybody that wanted to have a piece of property to put a second property or on, should, like, if say someone wanted to put a tiny home in someone's backyard, that the property owner would get maybe a tax break or a cash benefit of say $300 a month to offset that. So the whole NIMBY thing was kind of curbed. Well, people who had a disability could be financed using their disability to get the tiny home, right? So you were pleasing both ends of the spectrum.
Well, but a lot of municipalities already have what they're called. What they're called is they're called back alley houses, and a lot of, like Vancouver. My daughter lived in one in Vancouver, a back alley house, and it was a beautiful. They took a garage, added a floor onto it, and turned it into a nice. And they even had their own little yard in this person's backyard. And so this is a thing that's already been going on, but it's just not enough. And like, I mean, one of our NIMBYs, I was in a meeting and she was like, oh, well, what about these? And I said, those are a great idea, but they're just not the only solution, because other cities that have had a housing crisis longer than we have been doing that. And they still need to rezone to allow, to make it easier for people to build more housing, right?
It's like building a loft on top of it, and making it affordable too.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just not enough. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's good.
Oh, yeah.
I'm all for it. But yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Over to you, MJ, on that, and then over to you, Dan, on your take about zoning. Where do you see housing getting all these homes built, like 4-plex, 6-plex on one lot, but making sure that they're actually affordable? I mean, affordable. I mean, Doug Ford could, or I'm picking on Doug Ford, B drop down, but
I'll be right back. Catch me up when I get back.
Yeah.
I feel like the kid at the back of the class that wasn't listening to the teacher. I don't think it's gonna happen, and the ones that do happen are just gonna cause mayhem with parking and other problems, sewage, garbage.
Yeah.
Neighbors bitching. Can I say something else? Because probably
no, go for it. Yeah.
So they did a vote in the committee this morning asking for CDB to be implemented by March.
Right.
And it's not to be implemented, to ask the House to implement it by March. So I don't know if that means there'll be a vote in the House. I think so. I'm not really sure. But there may be a vote in the House. So I'm just asking everybody to bug the shit out of your MPs to vote yes for this if there's a vote in the House, especially the Conservatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the House is still in the House of Commons, just so people watching this live or they're watching it later. If you're watching later today or tomorrow, the House of Commons sits officially for one more week. That's this week. Yeah, that's the week of the 11th here until Friday. God forbid if they decide to take off a day early for Christmas. I mean, well, they haven't taking care of their citizens across the country financially and giving them the proper resources. Housing, housing is a human right. Food security, the resources that they need. People with disabilities, seniors. I mean, seniors have a disability too. I mean, they have multiple disabilities. As we get older, we get more disabilities. Are they diagnosed? Well, not always. Not always. With that being said, I'm going to pass it over. MJ, I can come back to you. I'm going to pass it over to Dan about the housing. Then I think we're going to start slowing down the segment. We'll just start doing some closing comments in the next little bit. I think, are we good till 3 o'clock there, Neil?
It's fine. Yeah. I just wanted to ask about Dan's Breakfast of Champions, though. I noticed he had the 2-liter bottle of pop earlier, and then he had the little candy chews,
Yeah, I'm actually working on the eggnogs.
I love that. I got Tim Hortons Timbits. Now, with regards to housing, though, like back in 2015, that's actually how I got one of my starts within politics. I was like the poster child for the IMBY Festival in Toronto here.
Right.
So I learned a lot about the zoning and bylaws and shit like that. Here in Toronto, we're all over the place. We got areas of Toronto such as Scarborough that right now, as it currently stands, don't allow rooming houses. So you got a bunch of bitching and whining and complaining out there about that. You got people, a lot of rooming house fires lately and non-regulated homes. And what you just said, I think they call it multi-purpose living or something with the 5- and 6-story places there. I think any home is a good idea, right? There's going to be areas where you got to build up. There's going to be areas where you got to build out, right? But one of the things I learned working on all of and I'm glad it was various campaigns that I worked on over the years for all parties, is that I got the different perspectives, right? My perspective is I personally don't complain about housing. I have an RGI unit. I'm one of the lucky ones, so to speak, right? If I didn't, I'd be homeless, right?
I'm so envious, Dan. You have no idea. 90% of my ODSP is rent. Gone, done. I'm left with $30. Thanks for coming out.
Well, and I just reduced my rent to $600 a month, and I was expecting and the cost of everything else. I'm still like, I'm trying to get through to the 22nd, and then I got to figure out how to make what I get stretch until February 1st. After that,
right?
It's like I try to explain it to people that I talk to, right? Everybody looks at me and for example, the green thing and tie and stuff earlier, and you're an office dude, you're a fucking government guy. No, motherfucker. I was on OW for 17 years, and I was on ODSP for 2 years, right? And for the past 20-something years of my life, just like I'm sure Cassandra and MJ and yourselves have done, right? It's been nonstop advocacy, right? So you got to know pretty much what it boils down to is you got to know how to tell them to, and MJ's getting a killing out of this, but you got to tell them to fuck off without telling them to fuck off, right? So like I said earlier, you got to have the ability. I used to tell somebody all the time, they said, Dan, how's John Tory? And I go, well, I don't know. And I go, what do you mean you don't know? You work on the second floor, right? I go, yeah, I've had days where I walked up to him and said, hey, Mr. Tory, nice to see you today, whatever. I've had days where I'd be standing outside his window with 200 other people saying, you fucking asshole, come back, blah, blah.
But it's diplomacy, right? You're talking about diplomacy, being diplomatic and being able to. I mean, there is an art. There is definitely an art to talking,
Archie.
telling somebody to F off without
You're a
being looked
special
at.
person.
That's
You're a
it's like
real
when
doll.
yeah, it's like when I have a guest on of like a politician, right? It's I can agree, I can hear like agree or listen to like the viewpoint of it. Yeah, this is where it's at. But at the same time, it's like holding them accountable, saying, yeah, but this is based on lived experiences, so like people are suffering, and all you hear is, well, there's more to do, but it's holding them accountable. And I think it's like
And
saying,
then and then Brent says, "Well, isn't that special?
Well,
Isn't that special?"
Well, the other thing that frustrates me, what frustrates me with the housing, like all these things that we've talked about are really important things.
They are.
But the crunch, I keep trying to change the narrative. I've got some housing as a human rights people that are also, they keep calling it a housing crisis. And I keep saying, this is beyond.
It's beyond a housing crisis.
This is a housing emergency.
Yep.
And it's great that you're finally investing in all these things that are going to happen in a few months to a few years. But what about the immediate situation that's happening right now? Because there are people going homeless for the first time in their lives daily,
and they don't
that have jobs that are not the traditional people you think of as homeless, that don't fit the marginalized groups, and they're going homeless. And that's going to add to our healthcare system. There's going to be I mean, there was a big report out here about the amount of people that are losing like digits and limbs from frostbite, because it gets to like, I've picked homeless guys up off the street because they're huddled up against Tim Hortons.
Well, yeah,
and they're trying, and the wind with the wind, it's minus 30, but the wind chill's minus 40. And I'm like, and the other issue is like, well, the shelters, I'm like, there's this one shelter, the drop-in, I'm like, well, how about if I take you to the drop-in center? Because I'm thinking that's the close. No, we will freeze to death before we will go, because that place is unsafe. We experience violence there. We experience theft there. It's not secure. It's not staffed well. And we do not want to go there. I mean, we have other ones, like one of our good ones is the Salvation Army Center for Hope is a favorite. Everybody wants to go there. It's the best one. But we also got the Mustard Seed, which, by the way, our community and social service minister's family runs and started. But anyway.
Yeah. They're not there, are they?
It's not a favorite. It's better than the drop-in center, but it's not as good as the Center for Hope. But
I thought maybe the minister was living in it or something like that.
No, it's
no. I'd be sarcastic.
I won't even. That's a whole can of worms. I won't even get into. But the point is this idea. Like one of the, I was told, but he tours these places all the time, and I'm like, okay, so him and the frontline workers that actually work in them day in, day out, and the people trying to get people into those places, they don't know what they're talking about, because he tours them once in a while. He knows more than they do.
More about lived experience, though. I mean, people who live in
I mean, we had this town hall with the federal housing minister, and it was put on together by the Women's National Housing Network. Housing and Homelessness Network. And we had people with lived experience, and we had people that were frontline workers. And the stories I heard, like I wasn't quite to the point where I was completely raising the alarms in my head on my situation. I had some hope, and I'm
close to it, though.
and I'm listening to this, and I'm like, okay, like the stories they were telling me about not being able to get people housed or even in a shelter, the stories that they kept telling. And I experienced that, like calling up all these agencies and individual housing places for people with just, and they're like, I'm so sorry. All they could tell me was, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I heard that, like literally the only thing they could give me was, I'm sorry, because they had nothing. and they were all using the same, and then they refer you in circles because they're all using the same pool of resources.
Yeah.
So they all got the same pool of resources, all these different frontline agencies. And they're going, well, have you tried this? And so they're literally referring you in a circle till you come back to them again.
The one door, but it's like they're all going to that one
right
door.
Because it's just one pool of resources that they're all drawing from. And what we really need, one of my bones of contention was our mayor was like, oh, she put a motion on the floor of council, and she, Mayor Gondek, and she said, oh, it was to make open up city land and put up temporary modular housing. And then she said, for families. And if you go into the housing, there are families going homeless right now, and I don't want to take away. We need that for families. Yeah, and I don't want to take away from that. But single person households are more than 2 times as likely to be in core housing need than households with more than one person. That includes single parent families. And it's like, why just families? If you go into the tent cities, you're not seeing families. You're seeing single person households. Yeah. And if you're going to these growing, it's single person households. Those are the ones that are and the biggest reason is multiple levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal have always, nobody wants to see a child out on the street. Well,
no, I know
they're not even properly tracking out here. Like when they're doing their demographic tracking, they're not even tracking disabilities. And yet we've got other statistics from others show that people with disabilities by far are one of the major groups that you're finding in these tent cities and stuff like that, that are going homeless, and you're not even tracking it, let alone doing anything about it. And do you know what I mean? It's like,
totally.
So it's fine. Yeah, we don't want children living on the street in cars in tent cities, but we also don't want people with disabilities and seniors or anybody that is a human being put in that situation. And
nobody should have to be put in that situation.
You keep targeting resources to the exclusion of people. That's what creates statistics like the statistic that single person households are more than 2 times as likely to be in core housing need. It's because of that exclusion, and that's what needs to be. So it needs to be today. What are you going to do temporarily for today? What are you going to do to get people housed over the winter so they're not losing digits? They're not, frostbite isn't taking their feet and their toes and their fingers, and costing our healthcare system more money and making them more disabled. Or some of them weren't disabled and became disabled because of homelessness. And there is an economic argument that says if you invest in these things and keep people warm, you are going to spend less money on healthcare and other resources, and you're going to actually save money in the end. So this idea that we're going to just focus on this target group to the exclusion of other target groups is ridiculous. It's like, let's just house people and let's get them immediate shelter so they don't have to suffer through the winter. And that's all.
Thank you on that, Cassandra. And that's a human right. I mean, and wow. I mean, if I had done the segment yesterday on the Human Rights Day, I'll tell you, just one sec. If we had done the segment yesterday, but we didn't, but that's okay, because we're talking about the human rights today. I couldn't have said that any better than you just did regarding that. You must have been reading my mind, because I was just like, wow, like there are so many options that can be done now, like things that can be taken care of now. There's so many empty buildings. I know in this community, there's a lot more that has to be built. It's been neglected over decades and decades and decades. Why? Because it's all based on tourism. Nobody's going to want to live here. They're going to want to come to visit. Then they're going to go away. Now the city's sold off so many hotels, motels. Why? To house the homeless. Why? Because they're not given the right the right amount to live on, to actually have a dignified life and to have affordable housing. So now they've sold out hotels and motels. Now tourism. Now, where are the people going to stay? Now they got a huge Airbnb issue going on. Gee, I wonder why. That's another underground issue, and I'm not even gonna. That's another topic in itself.
Another rabbit hole.
Quickly, it's the last thing I'm going to say.
Yeah.
The other article I read is actually about Vancouver. So they put up these temporary modular home units, and now they're sitting empty because the new mayor and the new council came in and decided they didn't want to do that anymore. There was a city councilor that tried to get them to keep it, but these units are sitting empty, and you've got a growing homeless population. And this Vancouver mayor, he has to go because he is making the situation worse. What he's doing to the homeless, the way he's approaching the homeless encampments, the way that he's, it's there. There's all like I saw the size of this temporary modular.
Oh, terrible.
On city land, and
Empty
all
home.
Empty.
My L was backwards because I had a stroke and I can't do my left arm so well.
The loser.
I have a disability.
Well, I just wanted to say that the backbone or the mandate of another Nobody Mean Streets was just that. It was to expose the fact that people with disabilities were 80% unhoused or on the way to being unhoused. And like my first attempt at Another Nobody was strictly homeless, and I fell into that project, not to be the leader of it, but to be part of it being put together. But it was done on a very grassroots level. Another Nobody, and I'm not trying to pitch my book or project or anything, but Another Nobody Mean Streets Part 2, I guess, is more of a polished, refined look. So when I saw Pierre Poilievre's little documentary that was circling around the media, a light went off in my head and said, well, what if we did this like a politician, except as a part of a community across one big community, which is coast to coast, and made a 5-minute documentary that could go to the media and rattle some. I want people for John Street and for Campbell Street and whatever the address is, on the phone to their MPP going, I saw this on news. Why am I being led to believe by the media that everybody with a disability isn't housed? What is this? That's the upset I think that documentary needs to do. It needs to start an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah.
But it's censored. The media is so censored. They will not stick disability stories on there. That's the problem. I email them constantly. They never respond.
They do lots of disability. I've seen just lots in the last few, in the last few weeks. Just
if it's
Global does it.
If it's
Global
flashy,
does it. Yeah. Global does it by the guy to Catherine's.
The problem I always say is that disability isn't sexy enough. Like that's the truth, right? I mean, we all know that the kind of sex sells, like it has to be sexy in order to refer to and disability just is not sexy. So it's
almost like it's like if a headline is like a splashy word that the media will catch on. Disabled person decides to walk across Canada for to get some kind of a fundraiser or whatever it may be. Also, oh my God, the media will be all over it, right?
Just so you know, just this month I have seen quite a significant increase in CBC and CTV doing stories about individuals with disabilities on a number of issues, not just income, but housing and not just income, but housing and other things as well. And there was one we just had one out here, was about a lady. She was I think she was in Edmonton, but she needed to go to school in Calgary, but she couldn't find an accessible place that was affordable so she could do the schooling that she needed to do. Like we've had a number of stories, not just in Alberta, but also on the main news network, the national news networks as well, like that have been, and especially over the past month, I've seen quite a few more than I'm used to seeing. So something's starting to get traction.
The legs are starting to move around.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I'd like to propose that we do a think tank Zoom meeting. Doesn't have to be like tomorrow or anything, but something where we can come up with the pitch, the guidelines for the videos, and just get it out there. Because I bet you people will make a 30-second to 2-minute video, and then we can start filling it in with content around it. And if we can get it out, we can create something like everybody's got a camera on their phone. If they don't have a camera itself, just go out there and be a journalist. Tell your story, 2 minutes, where you live, what your situation is. If you're nonverbal because of your disability, write it out in a marker and get a family member to film it.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, you remember, that thing where different people have done the silent, and these were people that could talk, that with the notepad, and then they're like,
oh yeah, with
writing.
paper,
yeah, those are impactful.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that when Alan was saying it earlier, and that's what I was thinking of when he was talking about that.
You know what I can do is I can do a little 1-minute short of what Ellen just said. I'll splice up a 1-minute short, post that up, and we'll put it out there. We'll blast it out there. And Ellen, you can start taking your camera around and see if you can interview some people, and then get some footage coming in, and I'll edit it down.
Well, I'd like to see people I don't know who may not be in our disability community, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, seeing it and going, hey, I could do that.
Yeah.
I might not be able to speak verbally, but I could write. I could go to the dollar store and get a red marker and a white background, or a black marker and a white background, and I can write, I'm Joe, I live in this, I have Down syndrome, or whatever it is, and this is my story, and I can't even afford to eat because I have to pay 90% of my rent money to rent, and I can only go to the food bank once a month. Thank you for listening.
I like
that kind of storyboarding, but and you just take 30-second, 2-minute videos, 2-minute max, and you splice them all together.
Yep.
And we put some text content in the middle, like little quotes by politicians who actually said things like, Doug Ford told me, all a disabled person needs is to find a job.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I mean, what would be impactful, because one of the barriers to this is it cost. I mean, where you really want to get this is, again, on main news networks, and it's the cost behind it that becomes prohibitive. And I'm not saying not to try. Maybe we can figure it out. But the reason I'm putting that as a caveat before what I'm about to say next, because I keep thinking about the Heritage Minute, and what if there was a series called the Disability Minute?
Right. Yeah. I think you're onto someone there, Cassandra. Rather than the Heritage Minute, the Disability Minute.
The Canadian Disability Minute. Yeah.
We could call it 60-second Crips.
Yeah.
60-second Crips.
New street talk.
Ding, 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 ding.
Talk.
60-second Crips. I like that.
Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. We have.
The New Street Second. New Street Minute. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah,
Anyway, we
man,
should be
Sam.
punching out.
Yeah.
We should be punching out.
So what we'll do is we'll just quickly do a like a one minute blurb to each person, and then then we'll call it a day until the next segment. Okay, over to you, Dan. I'll hand it to you first.
Dan's gonna dance us out. Give us your best dance move, Dan.
Okay, hold on. Got to get the swear jar. No, it's been totally awesome as always, man. I believe it or not, I do enjoy having conversations with people about this stuff, and in fact, even people that I disagree with, because it's the only way you learn, right? One thing for Cassandra there is actually, this is ironic that you mentioned the Hope Shelter. So January 27, 2016, and I could send you the video later, or you can go check it out. That was actually the first deputation I ever gave, was to open the new Hope Shelter here in Toronto at Leslieville. I actually stayed in the old one back in 2005. So yeah, Salvation Army to my family and to the area is pretty important. Just to answer your question quickly from earlier as to, and I think you were being facetious. I don't know. I don't even know the meaning of the word. But like when you asked about families and why is it more important than single persons, it's very bluntly simple. And that is, if you got 4 million people in a city, it's much easier to get those 4 million people's votes if you have them all in a household of 4 or 5 people as opposed to a single person, right?
I was being I was being rhetorical.
That's the word. Sorry, I used the wrong word. That's the word. And just in ending too, right? It's like never judge the book by its cover. And like you guys were saying earlier, you alluded to everybody doing their part, right? So I'll do my part right here, right? So you might think I'm nuts, but go fact check it out. 2014, met Trudeau, and one of the things he said to me in our conversation at a gay church service at World Pride, must have been a fluke, eh? But one of the things he said to me was that he loves how we all work together. Hey, buddy, fucking prove it, man. Remember? Yeah. And then said to me, and this is important to me, and this has just come to light to me over the last couple of weeks. But I'm going to use what I got to try to help, right? I said it on a show the other day, and I'm going to repeat it only one time for you guys. I encourage everybody to contact Carl Subban. That's the father of PK Subban that used to play for the Montreal Canadiens in Nashville and everything in hockey. He was actually my teacher back in the day in the 80s. And ironically, that was my introduction into the food breakfast programs for kids. So that is one person that if you really want to work on that issue, that's who you would contact, because we need people to contact people about things directly, right? You can't have somebody like Dan screaming about housing or food programs to the person that's in charge of seniors issues, right? Yeah. So if we can do that, that's my part. Carl Subban, he remembers. Remember, Carl, the last time you saw me, you were pulling me off my buddy, punching his nose. Get it together and fucking help us, because we need fucking help. No matter where you look at it, we need help from all aspects, whether it be basic income, housing, seniors, disabilities. We need to do it. And that's all I got until October of 2026 in Ward 8.
Thanks, Dan. Awesome. Thank you so much on that. It's always a great pleasure hearing your perspective on where things are at. And just to kind of comment regarding the food program that was voted down. I totally echo that, man. As soon as I heard that, I was furious within myself. I was like, are you kidding me? Like children. And so he's going to think, oh, people are so mad that, it's just raging people up. What he did was he actually hurts as a ripple effect throughout all the country. It's not just the children, it's the family, it's their parents, their grandparents, just people that they know. Now
he voted against giving our soldiers a raise and helping our veterans too as well.
He wanted to do a marathon. It does make his point across. Well, if I don't get what I want, I'm going to hold them hostage for 30 hours. And what did he do after not even an hour? Apparently, he took off to a fundraiser. Yeah, and left all his MPs there. And I'm sure a lot of them were very disgusted, but they had to do because their boss said, "You do this, otherwise."
Well, if they were truly disgusted, they would have stood up against their leader.
Exactly. Yeah.
And been vocal. If they were really disgusted, they weren't.
No,
I mean, they all, I mean, it was them voting against these things, right? Yeah. So they were towing his line. you know, and even though he was treating them like garbage, and I mean,
they could have stood up. They could have stood up and said, "No, I'm not going to vote on this. Like, I'm not going to vote against."
I was willing to look past all the bouncy castles, all the Randy Hilliers, all the Pierre Polyev bullshit going on. But the second he said you're not going to feed your own people and one of the most vulnerable groups of people, your kids, stick it in your. I don't care if it was my mother and she's listening right now. Okay, she's in the chat. If you did that to kids, you have no business being in the country, let alone running the fucking country. That's stupid, idiotic, and thank you very much. I'll shut up now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and as soon as I heard about that, I just, I had lost all my total respect for you, Mr. Polyev. I lost total respect for you. Absolutely.
I think he shot
I haven't had respect for him since he got in under Harper, because I remember it. There was no respect. All he did was confirm all he did was solidify and confirm the beliefs I already had about him, and that he just proved me right. You know, to anybody that doubted me, he just proved me right.
Yeah, I mean, especially with children. I mean, like using children as a anyway. I'm going to pass it over to MJ on that. Any comments? Maybe Cassandra. Actually, first, since I got you on right now, what are your ending comments for today's segment?
Well, just back to, I'm just going to go back to the whole. I mean, there's a lot of affordability issues that we are having right now, but the number two thing, the two number one things. There's two number one things on the top of my list. And that is housing, of course, because of what I've recently, is that we need to do something in the immediate while we're waiting for all these investments to make fruition. We need to do something immediately to house people now, so they're not freezing in the streets in December and January. And sometimes March. We'll see how this year goes. But we also need to start, like, food banks are not an option. And I really and maybe one day you can have me on to talk about this, but my number one affordability issue has been, and it was something I was working on with housing before I faced my own houseless journey. And that is food insecurity. I don't believe in food banks. Food banks are the canary in the coal mine. They're the canary in the coal mine. We didn't have food banks from the 1930s until the 1980s, when we had that really deep recession.
That's right. My mom used to
that was
on that. Yeah.
And then we started soup lines all of a sudden, which turned into food banks. They were supposed to be temporary. They made it into an industry, and now they're at their breaking point. And well, Loblaws is no different than Walmart. We're seeing the Walmart effect. We just had an independent in the community I'm in of Bowness. There was an independent grocer that had been there for decades and decades, called the Bonesian. They recently went out of business, and it's these big box stores that can buy in bulk and drive the wholesale prices up for smaller grocers. And I really think I want to put them out of business. I want to come up with ideas. One of my ideas is more urban agri-hoods, not community gardens, urban agri-hoods, so that we can stop taking. There's no reason you can grow a head of lettuce in your kitchen all year round. We need to start teaching people how to do that, because nobody should be paying $10 for a head of something that you can grow in your kitchen without any effort. And so we need to take the money. We need to take the oligarchs of Walmart and Loblaws and such out of the market, and we need to take them to their knees. And that's all I have to say.
I'll get Neil to schedule you in for a segment about food insecurity, and we'll talk about that off the show, like when the show ends, and then we'll figure that out. We got January all open up right now. Actually, we're already booking in to January. Over to MJ, and then I will do my last comments, and then I'll send it over to Neil.
I just have an idea I would like to see for another show is this idea that all disabled can work.
Oh, yes.
Drives me
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh.
And how the ones that do want to work can't get the help they need to get back into the workplace.
Yeah.
And then they punish you for it because you can work.
Mm.
Anyway, I'd really like to see that in the future. And thank you for having me today.
Yeah.
You know, MJ.
It's lovely having you, MJ.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you were able to come back, and
Yeah.
I was disappointed when you went away, and I was like, oh, I really wanted to hear, because I kept seeing your facial expressions and your laughter, and I'm like, oh, I'm just dying to hear what
It's
she
like,
has
it's
to
like
say.
I want to say something. It's like that I felt bad after. I'm going, oh gosh.
I forgot to mention too, one of the times I did flip out last time I saw you was the social worker comment. Because yeah, I had my own experiences with those stupid people.
You know, we could do a segment on that too. I mean, like, that's what I mean. Like, there's so many segments that we could do, and then I do follow-ups and I get them back on again, and then I do our roundtable segments. Like, we just mix it all up, right? And I think it makes it so interesting because people may say, oh, they may be thinking like what we're talking about now, going, oh, I'm going through that. I wonder if they're going to talk about that. And that's what I mean. It's about lived experience stories, or lived experience of what you're hearing or what you're going through. And I think people need to hear that. And I love what Ellen had come up with, that idea too. Something that Neil and I had talked about prior, about, and this kind of goes back to a lady that Sonia and myself know. And she had brought this idea to me. Oh my gosh. And Sonia had brought this to my mind. And but there's one advocate. She's very strong in the community. She's dropped off for now. She's still around. I know she's around because one of her sons actually does come on to the podcast. And Neil knows who I'm talking about. The one lady, she came on, and she's a girlfriend of the one. But she's a very feisty advocate. She held the BC government to account. She actually collapsed the government. She was the one who collapsed the previous government. No, actually not the previous, the previous before. Sonia and I were actually helping her very, very dearly, and making our disabled voices being heard across the province. She wouldn't take no as an answer. Let's put it that way. She got right in their face, but in a very polite, but very firm way, should we say. Like saying, yes, you can try to silence us, but yeah, it's like saying you can try to silence us, but our voices need to be heard. And she did it for her kids. She called them my kids. And they'd say, Mom, why are you doing this? Because I'm doing it for you, because the government won't listen. And then she'd stand outside our parliament buildings, you guys, and she'd say, well, these walls may be thick, but they wax behind their ears is actually clogged up. They can't hear what we're saying. So she would amplify it nice and loud. So with that being said, she advocated about the bus passes. She advocated about the rates being inadequate, that way below the standard of living. And all we hear is crickets now of, well, there's more to do. We've raised it 4 or 5 times in a year, and there's more to do. It's like, yeah, like, and Sonia always says, pittance, and I say breadcrumbs, you know what I mean? But it's like saying, well, it's like that carrot trick, right? That we all talk about. It's like dangling along. Yeah, there's more to do. Well, you know what? Like, it's Cassandra, you're right. We want to see action now. Like, words are great. I love words, but we need action based. And Dan and I, we always talk about this too. Like results. We want to see results now. Like, and like getting a fund out to help people now. Like, let's get something. If it's DERB or whatever it may be, let's get something out there now to help Canadians across this country. And
sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly end, and then over to you, MG, right away.
I forgot, that was another thing I wanted to say about Cassandra's story. I too cannot take a bus, and they need to change this, because for me to go to work, I need a car. No way around it. So which means I'm going to need gas. I'm going to need plates. I'm going to, like, if I hit somebody, I'm going to need a repair, like whatever. But like, they don't account for any of that. All their little things are just to try to keep us down. Drives me crazy.
It does. And it's like Sonia, she's got a driver's license. I don't. I can't drive. And she says, I would love to be able to drive, to go to some of these other places to maybe look at opportunities, but she can't afford insurance. The rates are too low. She can't even do that. And, trying to take the transit bus around is just not always accessible to get to certain areas. And again, I find that a barrier trying to get.
And I can't even take like the handy bus or our version out here is I can't even do that because it's just the exhaustion of getting on and they churn you around so long.
Oh my God, 2 hours, half hours.
It's like I'm so exhausted. Like I just don't have the spoons to even just sit. Yeah.
You can take it to work. Oh yeah, but we'll drop you off within a 3 hours time. Well, yeah, okay. Well, I have to be at work at 8. Well, we'll get you there between 7 and 10.
No, I know. I got kicked out of it was a chronic pain program, which is more like a rehabilitation program. And I got, because if you missed so many 2 or 3, you got removed from the program. And I got removed from the program not because of anything I did. They picked me up. Like literally the place I had to go was 10 minutes away. They drove right past it. Drove right past it, drove me around for an hour and a half and dropped me off an hour and a half late.
Wow. A lot of the handy darts, they call it in BC, they call it handy dart service. A lot of them are contracted out to other contractors and they take you to medical appointments. Oh, you want to go grocery shopping? Sorry, we don't do that. I said medical appointments are priority. Or they drop you off if they're on their way. We'll make it look like you're going to medical.
You're only allowed 2 bags, and so if you want to do an actual, you have to get you can't shop around, to different stores. You got to go there, do one store, do all your shopping, and then take a cab back.
Or they'll tell you to take a conventional bus back because we don't have room. I know it's I was told that one time.
I can't even do that.
Yeah.
That's a human rights complaint. Oh my God.
I had that happen once. I had to go to a medical doctor's appointment because they were doing a reassessment of people with disabilities. And it was right in the middle of the freaking transit strike. And the only bus that was going was Handy Dart because they weren't part of the transit system. They were contracted out. So they had to pick me up. And it says, well, we'll take you about 2.5 hours to get you to your doctor's office. 2.5 hours? Yep. All around here and there. And meanwhile, it should have only taken about 42 minutes maximum to get me to my appointment. But no,
and you'll be back sometime by Thursday.
Yeah, we'll get you there, but we'll be back in about an hour to pick you up, sir. I go, what? Well, okay, actually, you know what? We'll go and pick up. Hang on, Alan, one quick sec. We'll go in. We have to go and pick up Mr. Smith and Jacqueline. Who are they? Oh no, yeah, you don't take the snuff. Yeah, the guy actually knew them by name. But actually, you know what? Hour and a half, Brent. Your doctor's office needs to have these forms done. What? You know what I mean? Like, and so I said, well, can I go to the grocery store on the way back? We'll make an exception, but if it's more than a couple bags, you have to take conventional bus back. I'm like, they're on strike? Oh yeah, they're on strike. Well, you have to wait till maybe another week. You can maybe make an appointment. Oh, I was so livid. Anyway, everyone, I want to thank everyone for coming on today and doing this extended long series that we have. We're going to definitely do some programming notes and incorporate in some of these ideas. I think that going forward, lived experience stories. This is a amazing series that we have going right now. But we can maybe try to channel that into something even more once the 9 series ends. We can channel that into something even more superior. But we'll have to have I think we might have to have a Zoom, not a recorded one, obviously, but we'll have a Zoom meeting with all of us on here.
A top secret one.
Yeah, top secret one. And what I'll do is, and
no,
and the ones
not top secret,
and the ones
nobody can know.
I'm
Nobody
not
can
there.
know.
I never showed up to that top secret.
Oh no,
If
me
anybody
neither.
asks.
Oh.
No, I just
but the open mic segment would be preempted. It'd be kind of bumped off. I'm sorry, due to programming technical difficulties, we are not able to provide that show today. Oh, I know, and I feel bad because I launch it. Someone says open mics, this is great, and then we launched it once and twice, and then
This is a restricted area. Please turn your car around. Restricted area. Please go back on the door.
Or what's that IKEA commercial? Stop the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, over to you, Neil, for the ending segment.
I was just gonna say again, it will help our metrics if people like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff. It helps push the metrics out. So stick with us till Christmas, and we got lots of good shows coming up. Lots of good content.
We have a great show tomorrow. It's an extension off of today's show. It's about lived experience stories, so it's kind of an extension off today, and it's for Jason and Stephanie. They're going to be coming on, so I really encourage everyone who would love to tune in under the comments section, and please send in your comments. They've been through a lot, and I'm really anxious to hear what their story is about.
I wouldn't do my sheets.
Alan, I'm just
washed with a big blue stain.
Oh.
I think someone threw a pen
Hold on.
in the washing machine.
Or you fucking
One sec. There we go.
yeah, sorry about that.
You gotta love live TV, right?
Oh, live TV. I was just like, wait a minute, but it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, kind of tuning in tomorrow. I really encourage people to tune into tomorrow's segment about lived experience stories. It's an extension, like I said, off of today's session. Jason Ross and Stephanie Erb will be coming on to the show. They had moved to Victoria. They lived here for 2 years. Unfortunately, they had to move back to Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm not going to tell you a lot about their story because they'll be diving right into it. I'm really anxious and curious to hear feedback from people of what they've gone, what Jason and Stephanie have gone through. It's been a lot. I'll just summarize it. It's been a lot. I got to know two amazing people, and I will miss them. They asked me to come out to visit, but I was trying to save up to take a plane flight out there. It's not going to be cheap unless I can do a cheap airline fare, and maybe the provincial and federal governments will actually listen to the disabled Canadians across this country and raise our incomes above a standard of living because of our disabilities, so we can actually enjoy life, right? So I want to thank everyone for tuning in today, and definitely we'll catch you on the next show. Do you want to be a guest?
Dan's making me a coffee, and Dan's dancing. Dan's gonna dance us out, making us coffee.
And boiling spaghetti, Brent. Let's go, brother.
Right there. Stir it up. And stay tuned to that. There's a special segment coming up about eggnog, and I'm going to be giving those the feed to Neil on that one.
The quest for eggnog.
Neil doesn't know that yet, guys.
It's top secret.
It's top secret. Yes, I just concluded the part of it, so I have to do the ending part tonight and on it. But yeah, I'll be sending off. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.